Let's go to the story now. The closure of the South African Post Office could be sooner than expected. The Post Office was briefing Parliament's Communications and Digital Technologies Portfolio Committee on the business rescue process and its financial state. The state entity told Parliament that day zero could arrive as early as October this year unless it receives a financial injection. Last year, the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies placed the Post Office into business rescue as its financial stability had been undermined by unsustainable cost, operational inefficiencies, as well as its failure to modernize. Anoosh Rooplal is from the Business Rescue Practitioners and joins us now to provide us more insights into the looming crisis within the Post Office. Anoosh, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us. So what was the plan? You came up with the Business Rescue Plan, which also included that there would be some post offices that will be closed down, some post office staff members as well that would be retrenched, and then the money would then be made available. Then what happened?
Good morning to you and your viewers. Yes, thank you. Those elements were part of our business rescue plan, which was devised in terms of the Companies Act, and that plan really sets out the strategy and how we propose to rescue the SA Post Office. And those include various interventions, like, for example, rationalizing costs, trying to bring our costs down so that our revenue can exceed our costs again. Of course, a big element to that was the rationalization of the branches. We now have 657 branches. And unfortunately, retrenchments had to be done in order to rationalize the business to make it fit for purpose. A key part of the plan is also then the funding, the 3.8 billion, which is what we are asking for. In fact, that was a key component to the application. Mm-hmm. If we go back 1 year ago, the SA Post Office was in provisional liquidation. The application was made to bring it into business rescue, and it was premised on receiving two tranches of money, and that was the 2.4 billion and the 3.8 billion, which is what we are literally effectively following up on now.
Okay, so the 3.8 billion, when was that supposed to have been paid out? Because for me, it's a bit strange that you appear before Parliament and Parliament is told that day zero could actually be next month.
Yes, so we are obliged to be accountable and to report back to our department, which is the Department of Communication and Digital Technology, as well as to Parliament. So that was part of our responsible and obligatory reporting, where we have to highlight, the non-receipt of funding can obviously jeopardize the business rescue plan. So these monies were effectively supposed to have been received more than 6 months ago in terms of the initial application and, of course, the business rescue plan that was voted on by the majority of creditors for us to then implement the plan.
So 6 months ago, meaning roundabout what, February, January, earlier this year?
Correct, that is correct.
Okay, and the money hasn't come through. The money should be coming through from Treasury, I suppose. What's the explanation?
Well, I think as we're all aware, the fiscus is trying to manage its spending. There are some austerities that have been introduced, and it's effectively the processes that and the law and the ambit that the National Treasury has to follow in terms of allocating funds to the various state entities. And being a state-owned entity, we obviously have to follow the due process with National Treasury.
Yeah, but did Treasury say to you as the Business Rescue Practitioners or the Department of Communications that we don't have that 3.8 billion currently?
Well, they've indicated that there is difficulty, obviously, in allocating across monies, across the country's entities. We have, from our perspective as the BRPs or Business Rescue Practitioners, we have submitted and made all applications in order to get that money. So it's really in the hands of National Treasury.
So what does this then mean for salaries, number one? Will you be able to pay salaries next month?
So that was the whole point of highlighting, the possibility of running out of funds, should we not receive the funding. The envisaged outcome is obviously to not to liquidate the SA Post Office. We have put into various interventions to make sure that we can modernize the post office, improve its infrastructure, improve our service delivery, bring more services to the public. And of course, in that regard, this will then increase our revenues. and that's to defend current revenues and to bring on new revenue streams that can allow the post office to be effectively, on a standalone entity. So the intention obviously is to not end up in a liquidation scenario. Obviously, we will do and take the necessary action in order to avoid that. But yeah, possibly, should the funding not be forthcoming, then we've got to look at alternatives about how, we can work with what we have to rescue the entity still.
Okay. Do you have money to pay salaries next month?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And like I said, the report back to Parliament was our proactive stance in alerting, being accountable, and obviously, I suppose more importantly, alerting the fact that, this could be looming. We obviously don't want to get there.
Okay, so the Deputy Minister did indicate that you will be back again before Parliament, before day zero as it has been put. But what happens now with the liquidation process? At which point do you then decide that actually now we have to go forward with the liquidation of the South African the South African Post Office?
Okay, so I think the first point there is that I'd like to make is that from a business rescue perspective, we are completely on track with our business rescue plan. The 3.8 or the lack of or the not receiving of the 3.8 billion has slowed that process down. We will continue to monitor and keep the doors open and keep the business open because that's what we've done now for the last 12 months. And that's been actually working quite effectively because we've been able to implement various aspects of the business rescue plan, like reducing the mail backlogs for our domestic mail, completely eliminating all backlogs on international mail, overhauling our automated sorting process, and obviously testing various proof of concepts. For example, on the last mile, where we're looking at a multimodal approach by working with vehicles. We've leased in vehicles, trucks, motorbikes, etc. So we will continue with those initiatives because the plan talks to actually modernizing the post office to affect a better delivery. We will continue to that. We will monitor. We'll continue to engage to make sure that we do get funding to allow the entity to move forward and allow us, more importantly, to implement the plan.
Yeah. Again, I'm going to ask, at which point do you then decide that now we're actually going to go ahead with the liquidation of the South African Post Office if you don't receive the money? Do you have a deadline that you've set for yourself? Because I'm also thinking here, on one end you have the creditors that you've essentially made a commitment to that they would be paid. But then on the other end as well is that you are still operating a business and have to deliver service to clients. And I'm just wondering that what if I do acquire the services of the post office and the next thing the post office is being liquidated?
Yeah, so like I said, we've alerted to the fact that by end of October they could be running out of cash. So that's just, and I think it's important to highlight that's one aspect of the bigger picture. Obviously, we will monitor this more closely. There's certain aspects that we could do before we get into liquidation. And right now, it's very difficult to say. We may get the funding, and we would look at other alternatives before we make that call. So we will intensely, monitor this over the next 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
Very difficult to give you an exact date.
All right. With the 235 post offices that have been closed down, have you been able to sell those properties? Has there been any return in the decision to sell some of these offices?
Yes. So we've done a comprehensive review of our entire property portfolio. We've got that independently valued. Our property, owned and leased, creates a very important or valuable social infrastructure that we have as the SA Post Office. So the idea is not to sell off everything, but we will certainly sell off certain non-core properties. Our buildings, our network, our 657 branches, our connectivity to all the post offices effectively gives us a very valuable set of social infrastructure for us to then deliver our services. And in terms of the Postal Services Act and our universal service obligation, unlike the corporates, commercial entities who can close non-profitable post or offices or branches, we don't have that luxury. We have to make sure that we can deliver services to all South Africans in all geographical areas at an affordable rate. And I think that's an important point to highlight. And if I could, at this point as well, you mentioned our creditors, payment of creditors. So I'd just like to highlight that, pre-business rescue, when the entity was in liquidation, we had liabilities of about 8.7 billion rand. And through the business rescue and implementation of the plan, and the compromise, we're now sitting with liabilities of less than 440 million rands. So the entity is certainly solvent. It's a case of liquidity, and that's allowing us to get more funding to then improve on the infrastructure to continue operations.
Okay.
And a large part of the 3.8 billion, if I could add, a significant portion of that will be used to reinvigorate and to upgrade our infrastructure, which unfortunately was neglected over the last 10 to 15 years.
Okay, Anoosh, thank you so much for your time. Anoosh Rooplal is one of the business rescue practitioners for the South African Post Service. Thank you so much for making time for us.